Hi there, one and all, and a very warm welcome to Saga's Not Going Out Club's Write Time. Time to write! Yes, with me, Tony McHale. And do I hear a great weeping, wailing, and gnashing of teeth because this is our last session, session number 6? Oh, well, maybe not. Maybe it's just me. Anyway, before we start on session 6, I want to recap what we've been talking about so far. And the first session was all about the idea that you want to write to make your story work. And we talked about putting that idea down in just 1 or 2 sentences maximum so you keep focused on that idea. The second session was about developing that idea, and how we developed it was not in a linear fashion but in a much more creative way by taking any thoughts you had connected to that idea and jotting them down on a piece of paper. They could be a character, a line, a scene, a plot twist, absolutely anything, but we put it down on paper so we watch the story grow and grow. And the third session was about character. How we created a fully rounded 3-dimensional character, and we did this by doing a biography for each of the characters that detailed every aspect of that character so that you, the writer, knew that character back to front. And the fourth session was about nailing the story, and we were taking all those elements that we'd already worked on and putting them down in a beginning, middle and end sort of fashion. So now we could go away and write a short story about our story idea, or as we called it, a treatment. And the fifth session was all about dialogue and stage directions. The dialogue was about how we made it authentic, and we did this by listening, hearing and researching, but listening to those characters' voices was very important. And the stage directions was about getting them down as succinctly as possible, but at the same time creating the atmosphere you wanted for the scenes or the story. So that's where we are now. Before we go any further, I've got the answers to last week's trivia questions, which were all about lines of dialogue in various projects. And the first one was a line of dialogue in a film. And the line of dialogue went something like this. Oh no, it wasn't the airplanes, it was Beauty killed the Beast. Oh no, it wasn't the airplanes, it was Beauty killed the Beast. Yes, and that comes from a film. Did you know which film it was? I'm going to tell you right now, it was King Kong, the 1933 version. Yeah, a great film. And it was written by James Creelman and Ruth Rose. Actually, it was written by a number of other people as well, but those were the 2 people credited for it. And Ruth Rose apparently actually wrote that particular line. So the second one was from a novel. And the line of dialogue was this. Your firm writes most highly of your talents. They say you are a man of good taste. Your firm writes most highly of your talents, and they say you are a man of good taste. And there was a pause between the taste that's indicated in the text. And anybody get that one? I'm sure a few of you did. Yes, it's from that terrific novel. It's from Bram Stoker's Dracula, a great novel that if you haven't read, go out and read. And the last one was actually from a play. The last line of dialogue is from a stage play, which I think is probably the most difficult one to get, but see how you went on. The line of dialogue was, I got brown sandwiches and green sandwiches. It's either very new cheese or very old meat. I've got brown sandwiches and green sandwiches. It's either very new cheese or very old meat. And who got that one? Well done if you did, because it was Neil Simon's The Odd Couple, a great writer. If you've got all 3 of those, brilliantly. Well done, because they were quite difficult, those. But what I was doing was trying to illustrate how good dialogue can be. All of those have come from 3 very different genre pieces of work, and yet they're all great lines of dialogue. So that's what you were aiming for. So now on to session 6 in the deep end. And what session 6 is all about is a number of suggestions. Right? Nothing of this is set in stone. I want you to remain fluid and flexible, but take these on board and see if they're any good for you and see if you can use them. The idea being that we're going to try and make it easier for you to write your project, make it easier and more enjoyable. I am the crusader for enjoyable writing. I want everybody to enjoy their writing and not think of it as a task. So that's the idea of these suggestions. And the first suggestion is about a scene breakdown. And that's just as it sounds, a scene by scene breakdown of the piece of work you're doing. So you know exactly by the end of it how the structure works, where everybody's going, what scenes you're using, the whole bit. And we do that by doing what we've talked of before, which is scene headings, exterior or interior, the location, Buckingham Palace or Houses of Parliament, and night or day. Do that, then a little précis of the scene, and once we've done that précis of the scene, we know which characters are in it, what's happening. Also work out the shape of that scene. Each scene should be like a little play, and each of those scenes should either develop the plot further or a character further. They shouldn't stagnate. And that's what we're doing. We're putting down each scene like that until we get them all down. I put those into the computer, and so I can cut and paste so I can move them around, because you'll see as you start working on a scene by scene, things work in a different way than you thought they might. A lot of people write them on cards and put them on tables and physically move them around because they find that easier to keep a handle on it. It's whatever works for you. But that's the idea, is so you sort of getting the whole feel of the piece now in a far more detailed way. So that works for you. When you actually sit down and write, you shouldn't have writer's block, because you know where everybody's coming from and you know where everybody's going and you know what it's all about. Like I say, it still doesn't mean to say it's set in stone. If something great hits you, then get it down, because that's called creativity. So I do the same, exactly the same idea with a novel, but not in detailed scenes, but in detailed sections of the novel. So I have an idea of where I'm going, who's involved, and what's going to happen at the end. As I've said before, always know where you're going. Even if it changes en route, know when you're going to begin with. So that's that suggestion, scene by scene breakdown. The second suggestion is to do with formatting. To make your work look really good, it needs to be formatted right. Now, script formatting has changed tremendously over the years. When I first started, there was a different format for the BBC interiors. There was a different format for BBC exteriors, a different format for the ITV, for films. They all had different formats. They've more or less become standardized now. And there is a software package that makes this formatting much easier for you to do. And it's called Final Draft. Now, I honestly don't have any stakes in Final Draft. I'm not a shareholder or anything like that. I just think it makes your job much easier. It makes my job much easier. I've been using it for 25 years or so, and I don't really know what I'd do without it now. So that's one thing you can do. You can look at the possibility of using Final Draft. You can use Word, but it'll just take you longer. It's more laborious. And for a novel, there are script writing packages and, novel writing packages such as Scrivener and Ulysses. But strangely enough, what most writers use is Word. And that's still the most popular format to write a novel in. I use Word to write my novels. I've not had any problems with it, and I will continue to do so. So that's the thought. But make it look right. Make it look authentic, make it look the real deal. So that's formatting, to keep your formatting. The next suggestion is about read and rewrite. Every day I come into this office and I sit down, and the first thing I do is read what I've written the previous day. I go over it and go over it so I understand it and I've got it in my head fully. I then rewrite it, because rewriting tends to make a piece better and tighter. So I will always end up rewriting. At the end of the day, when I first started writing, when I first had the professional commissions, I couldn't understand why they always wanted to rewrite. Why didn't they just commission something they wanted? But at the end of the day, rewriting is part of the whole process of writing, and now I just love it. My problem is now letting the piece go, because I'm thinking, oh, I could just do with another rewrite on it, so it's even better, or that's what you hope, at least. The only problem with rewriting is when you get too many cooks involved, and then it can sort of destroy your initial thought. I've always thought if I arrived at certain script editors' desks with Romeo and Juliet, for example, they'd probably go, don't like the idea of both these guys dying at the end, both Juliet and Romeo. What about if Romeo lived? And what about if he went off with Friar Lawrence, for example? Because that'll give it a modern twist or something like that. I've never been told to do that, of course, because I haven't written Romeo and Juliet, but I won't be surprised if somebody did do one day. So that's the type of thing you have to put up with occasionally, but do it yourself, read and rewrite for yourself. It's really important. And the last one is about memory. The last suggestion is about using your memory and using it to its full extent, because memories are where you're going to get a lot of material from. I still use memories from way, way back, and I will continue to do so. I don't jot them down. A lot of writers jot them down in notebooks, but I've always managed so far to try and keep them in my head. But I think I'm getting to an age now where I might have to start making the notes, because I might be starting to lose some of the ideas, and I'd hate that, because they are still so incredibly useful. Is that memory about, for example, when I was doing Holby City, when I was kicking off Holby City, I'd been and seen some research about open heart surgery, and I sat in operations and all sorts. And there was one particular time when, and this was months before we actually started writing scripts for the program, but a surgeon I was observing had done some open heart surgery, and there was suddenly a bleed, and the PR person that was with me come up with this line about, is it a pulmonary hemorrhage or something? And the surgeon actually turned and went, no, it's actually what we call a cock-up. But unlike the average car mechanic, I can fix it. I just thought it was a brilliant line, and I remembered it. And weeks, months later, I was writing, I think it must have been script 5 or 6 of the first series of Holby, and that line came to me, and it fitted perfectly. Because that's the other thing, you need lots of memories so they fit perfectly. There's no point in just forcing them in. And that went in, it's in episode 5 or 6, and it just fit perfectly. It was great, and I loved the line. I thought it was terrific. Another thing is that I used to watch Adam Adamant. I don't know if anybody remembers Adam Adamant. It was a story about an Edwardian gent who's cryogenically frozen and then appears again in the 1960s. This was a TV series which I got hooked on when I was in my teens, and I always thought, what a terrific idea. Then years and years later, a few years prior to now, I understood the rights were available, so I got the rights for the show, and now I've written that as a total film for the cinema. Still trying to sell that at the moment, so if anybody wants to become a producer, now's the time. Come along, get your checkbook out, and we can go off and make Adam Adamant. I just think it's a great idea. I love the script as well, he says modestly, but I do think it's a good idea. So that came from my memory. So there's all sorts of things you can come from your memories, but just keep all those memories in store and use them whenever, because it gives it an authenticity about it as well. So that is it for today, and therefore it for Write Time. I hope you've really enjoyed yourselves. Like I say, the purpose of it for me is to take away all the myths about writing and saying to you, you can go ahead and write. I just wanted to make it as easy as possible for you so that you didn't have any writer's blocks and you enjoyed it, which is, again, as I say, really important. But more important and even than that, and this is my other crusade, is it opens it up to creativity. We're not working to a certain format. This isn't how you have to write a script. You write the script the way you want to write it, or you write the novel the way you want to write it, so it is a creative piece of work, and we're not just getting cloned things time and time again. So I want you to all go off and write your script, your novel, whatever, and I want you to enjoy it and have a great time. In the meantime, I might see you on a saga cruise. I don't know if anybody have been on a saga cruise that we've been on. We've had a great time because we've got all the passengers, not all the passengers, numbers of passengers in to sort of write a script. It's been a radio script, and it seems to have gone down really well and very enjoyable. We certainly enjoyed it, and it did seem the passengers did as well. So if you're around at any time and I'm on the saga cruise, please come and say hello, and hopefully you'll join in with us. In the meantime, if you do want to keep in touch, then I've got a website, which is a very simple website, www.tonymchale.com. Go on there. There are my blogs, and my blogs are all about writing, my career, and a bit about life. So you might glean some bits you want to do from those. So I hope you can join me on that. There's a way to leave messages on there if you wanted to, or you can follow me on Twitter at TonyMcHale11. And obviously, I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. So in the meantime, go off, enjoy your writing, do what you think is great, and finish, because that's the most important thing. You've got to finish your project, because our 3 rules are: right is right, simple isn't easy, and there are no rules. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. In the meantime, stay well, stay healthy, stay safe, stay alert. Au revoir for now. Thanks again.